Welcome to the Creative Warriors Podcast, the heart and soul of photography. I'm Ariel, Faith, your host. We are welcoming Beth. She's joining us again, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the inner voice and ways to deal with creative blockers and some other reflection. So are you ready, Beth? Welcome.
I am. Thank you.
All right. So how do you use your photography work as a way to challenge or confront your inner voice of doubt? Now, you haven't said you had one, but I can't imagine you haven't at least had it a little bit in your head that, you know, that inner doubt in your life experience. I can't imagine you haven't had it happen at all.
I have. Oh, yes, I have. I would say, especially when I was first getting into photography. Oh my gosh. When I look at those images now, I want to cry. They're so cringy. Like, I used to be so proud of these, right? And like, darn Facebook, right? It's like, Beth, we thought you would like to see this memory from 10 years ago. And I'm like, oh my God. Oh no. Here we go.
It's growth. You're seeing growth.
That is one of the reasons why I don't, like, on Instagram or anything like that, I don't archive old work. I will keep it up. Like, you can scroll all the way down to the bottom and you can see years ago, what I was doing. It's awful. I was like, ooh, look at the clarity slider. Whee! Right? Yeah. Ooh, saturation. Yay. Yeah, it's pretty bad. It's like, oh my God, this stuff hurts my eyes. So yeah, doubt. Yeah, absolutely. 1,000%. Where do I begin? Well, it's like what I was talking about earlier. Photography was one of those things that it never bored me. It never bored me. And despite how bad my photography was, I just kept going and going and going. And I was getting out a lot. And and I think you just kind of work through that, right? It's just like, you don't come out of architecture school being a starchitect, right? You have to practice and learn and be open to criticism.
Very much so.
Yeah. And I think that for me, that was a big thing. When I started kind of working with more art consulting firms and interior designers and things like that, I would say, what can I do to be better? Like, I want to hear from you. Like, give me your honest feedback. Give me your honest opinions about my work. And I got some pretty brutal feedback, which I really appreciated because I asked for it. Right.
Right.
And I really did want to learn and understand how I could improve. And I think, it's putting that ego aside and making yourself open to criticism and feedback. It's not easy. I mean, we put a lot of our heart and soul into our photographs. We put a lot of heart and soul into the practice of photography. So getting feedback and maybe even criticism, maybe even brutal criticism. It's a little tough to take sometimes, but, I think there was just a point in time where I'm like, I really am motivated to get better. I'm really motivated to make my work stand out. And, I really want to cultivate this voice that I'm developing, and how can I better, have my work represent what it is, like the story that I'm trying to tell and the message that I'm trying to convey and the emotions that I'm trying to impart. So yeah, I mean, criticism. Yeah.
It's interesting. Share with the audience just a little so that they understand something that I think is interesting here. So in the architectural world, when you have a design, I don't know how your firm works, but generally speaking, people will, I've gone to places where everything gets stuck on the wall and people take a red pen and they start marking all over stuff.
Yep.
And that's part of the growth of the project, right?
Correct.
Better design comes from the group critiques.
Yeah.
And so you literally have to throw your ego away at some point, right?
Yep.
And as a drafter, when I got it all done, I thought it was awesome, and it comes back to me and it's all covered. We called it blood because it was the red pen. It's all covered with stuff. And you're like, oh shoot, It's an opportunity for growth because every time I get those drawings, less and less would come back red, right? Because I learned, I could see, I understood what they wanted.
Right.
Right. So it was growth. So you learn the value of critique.
Yeah. I would say, my career in architecture, it's very consensus based. It's very teamwork oriented. It's interesting because photography is a much more, solitary practice, I guess. You're typically out shooting mostly on your own. I do photograph a lot with my husband, and it'd be interesting because we'll be in the same location and we come back with very, very different things. He sees different things than I do. But yeah, the practice of photography, it can be very, very solitary. And then even the process of going through and editing your images and sharing those images is a solitary thing. But yeah, in my career as an architect, it's very consensus based. It's very teamwork based. It is putting ego aside and asking for criticism. Yeah. And certainly that's the way, college was, all my college courses, and you probably experience this too, is you have what you call crits, right?
Right.
Critiques, and you're getting up in front of an audience and you're learning public speaking and you're defending your design, and people will say, well, have you thought about doing it that way? Or have you thought about maybe reconfiguring the adjacencies? This might work better, or maybe adding more glass and daylight here. So it definitely, it definitely has taught me to not take things super personally and ask for feedback and ask for criticism. Very similar to how I kind of viewed my own photography work. It's like I didn't want to grow as a photographer in a bubble or in a vacuum. It's not that I'm doing this to please others, but I do want that feedback. I do want to understand if what I'm trying to express and what I'm trying to convey is actually getting that intended reaction, I guess.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
When you do put yourself and your work out there, and you do have it critiqued. I never thought about having an art consultant as the critic, but that's an interesting person to have as a critic.
Yeah.
When you have them tell you their perspective, I know for me, when I've had different photographers through the years show me things in my images, I never saw those things.
Right. Yeah.
Because I was seeing other things.
Right.
Because I was emotionally attached to it. So, but now, and of course this continues to grow, but you start to see those things. And then you know how to alter those things. Like if there's hot spots or really bright points, you know how to create those or to remove those distractions, so to speak, right? Or limit them or lower them or whatever.
Yeah, so exactly.
But if you didn't even understand it, you wouldn't. Nobody ever showed you that. See all these points. Usually on the edges and stuff, that's drawing your eye. If somebody didn't say that to you,
right,
then you wouldn't see it.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
You continue to make the same mistake over and over. It's not that it's a mistake. Maybe you want them to see the edge of the picture. I have no idea.
Yeah, right. I call it border patrol. But
border patrol, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's funny how your eye gets taught.
Yeah.
And the more you either watch other people's work critiqued or have your own critiques, whatever that is. How has that helped you with your own belief in your own work? Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah, I think so. When I'm processing images, one of the goofy things that I'll do is I'll take my chair and I'll go way out and I squint and I'm like, okay, is there anything that's really bothering me? Yeah, I want to clone this and that. It's kind of like, it's just it's sitting on your images maybe for days, even weeks or months, and coming back when that emotional attachment isn't quite as strong. Like it's really easy to like go out, shoot a beautiful scene, and man, you want to share it like right away. Like you want to process it and share it that day or even the next day. But what I've been trying to do more of is just sitting on things, letting them percolate, so to speak, and once that excitement of that immediate, taking that image, I can look at it a little bit more objectively, right? I can come back and I can look at it more objectively and say, okay, is this what I'm trying to convey? Did I process this in a way that gets the point across, that tells the story, conveys the emotion, etc.? And a lot of times I'll re-edit something or make small tweaks to kind of make that stronger. But yeah, I think there's something to be said for allowing your images to sit for a little while and coming back to them. And I do that with really old images. I sometimes think back and I'm like, that day that I spent in that location was such a great day. I wonder if I can go back and find some unpolished gems, and sometimes I do. And that's always fun too.
Yeah, that is fun. I do that. I have a practice of doing that on purpose sometimes.
Yeah.
Because how I edited and my understanding of Lightroom and Photoshop and stuff was only so good at that point in time, right? Mm-hmm. So as I learn and develop that skill, I can look at an image in its raw state that I now know what to do with, which I didn't at that point.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
So even your vision of what the raw image changes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
And what's possible with that raw image, right? Exactly. Because I really look at those raw files are like a canvas to me, they're pixels that I brought home, but it's like a canvas on which I can process something in such a way, again, that tells the story that I'm trying to tell. So just using that raw file and looking at it as a canvas, I think is a fun way to look at our images.
Yeah.
It kind of puts it more in a mindset of just more creative, like, hey, here's all that's possible. Here's all the things that are possible for me to do with this particular raw file. So
yeah, I like the term painting with pixels. Because really, and I do ICM and some of those other more abstract-y type stuff. So
yes.
It really allows you to take the technical side of photography, which it is very technical, but there is also a very intuitive, a very emotional, a very evocative part of it too, that when we allow the creative heart to drive our work, the end result is there's more motion in it.
Yeah.
It's not just this sterile, gorgeous picture.
Right.
The scene. It's there's something to it.
Yeah.
I don't even know how to explain what
something mysterious, right? It's not a snapshot or, a postcard,
Right.
It's trying to say there's an underlying meaning. And again, I think your audience senses it when you do convey that emotion and that mystery in an image, it kind of makes them stop and look and maybe question things and hopefully be inspired. Yeah, exactly.
So how do you overcome creative blocks? Do you ever have them? I guess is the first question. When you kind of feel, you did mention that you disconnect and you you don't play, if you need to recharge, you will. So how do you identify those points in your life where you're like, oh shoot, I'm just not feeling it? How have you learned to do that? Because I think that's a skill to know when to put it down and when to pick it back up. I think that's a skill.
Yeah. I think you always need to ask yourself, are you still having fun?
Okay.
Are you having fun with this? I mean, honestly, this is fun, right? This should be fun. Let's not take it so seriously. When I feel like I'm not having as much fun, when I feel, there's a lot of creativity killers out there, right? Like, hey, if you're not having fun, that's a creativity killer. If it's a slog or you're doing it because you feel like you should be doing. So I'm using should in air quotes because that's something that we all tell ourselves all the time, right? if you find yourself in a trap of, oh gosh, well, why didn't this image do better? Why did I get so few likes? Why didn't I get more comments on something? Or, oh gosh, I'm so jealous. That person went out and got that epic shot. I wish I got that. And you fall into these traps, right? And these things are creativity killers. They really are. And I think being aware and cognizant enough of what those creativity killers are, I think is a good indication that you just kind of need to maybe take a step back, just relax. Things are going to be fine. Take a break, recharge your batteries, But yeah, I think the clearest indication is when you stop finding the joy, the immense joy and pleasure and fun that you're having in it, when it starts to become, when you feel like you're taking things too seriously, or you feel like you're comparing yourself to others. Those are huge creativity killers. So that's a surefire sign that you probably need to take a little break, and there's nothing wrong with that. Go and read a book, have a glass of wine, sit in the hot tub, I don't know, catch up on Netflix, whatever
you gotta do, right?
Whatever you got to do, right? Yeah.
Do you use play, the art of play in your work? Do you know what I mean by that?
Well, you mentioned like ICM, you mentioned like multiple exposures, Yeah, absolutely. Those are fantastic ways of getting out with a camera and doing something compelling and evocative and artistic and abstract, regardless of what the weather might be, or regardless of where you are, if you have, an epic landscape in front of you or not. I love playing with stuff like that. I've my friend Anne Belmont recently got me into the lens babies. I've been playing with those. So much fun. And I got
you into those?
She just did, believe it or not.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's addictive,
It is addictive. Yes, it is addictive for sure. It's just a different way of capturing a subject and conveying it in a different way. I mean, could you get some of those effects through post-processing? Probably, but it's just a fun way to reimagine your subject. And,
they're
playing with
playful. I think that's a good way to describe it.
Yes. Yeah.
They are exactly. More playful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely getting effects of a lot more softness and bokeh and blur. You don't have an image completely sharp from edge to edge. Mm-hmm. That's not the point. It's the play of it. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
I thought about that before, but that's absolutely true. Those are very playful lenses.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And if there's so many places you can rent from. If you want to try something, go out and rent it. You don't have to rush out and buy it, right?
Right.
But it might be enough, like maybe if you play with a new lens, or maybe, you get out those old extension tubes, or you figure out how your camera can do multiple exposures and camera, or, you're playing around with, intentional camera movement. Absolutely. Those things are really, they can really be reinvigorating, right? This is all about fun. Let's not take this super seriously. It's all about expressing yourself and just having fun with it.
Yeah. Do you ever do the like one lens exercise where you restrict yourself and just what can I do with this?
Yeah. That's a really, and again, it goes back to those constraints that I was talking about earlier. It kind of forces you to be more creative. You don't have all the tools in your arsenal. So what can you make work within the constraints of what you have?
And
I think that could be, yes.
Not just the perfect weather, Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The light that is.
Yeah. There's been a couple of times where I've taken trips that were not photography related, right? So, and if I'm lucky, I might bring one lens and my camera body, and that's it. And maybe like a Gorilla Pod or something like that. If I feel like I don't want to even pack a tripod or anything, right? And I sometimes will play around. I mean, I think one of the best ways to just play around and have fun and experiment is to ditch the tripod, right? And limit yourself to one lens and your camera body and see what you can get. You could probably say, hey, I'm just going to photograph things that are, of a certain color, or I'm just going to challenge myself by photographing just like a particular subject. But you can really get creative within those really tight constraints. So some of the non-photography trips I've taken, I think it was last year, my husband and I did a resort vacation in Mexico. We never do resort vacations, but for whatever reason, we did that. And it was really nice because it wasn't about photography. It was more about laying on the beach with a Mai Tai in your hand, right? But I was like, man, I really do want to bring my camera. And so that's what I did. I just brought one lens, one camera body. And, when you get older, you get insomnia a lot. So we would get up before sunrise. We'd walk down to the beach, and I got all these beautiful abstracts of the beach. And those are some of my favorite images because, what could I do without having my tripod, without having an arsenal of lenses at my disposal? And I just got creative with what I had. And I played. And those are some of my favorite images, or when I'm just having fun and playing around, but just getting, ICMs, getting a lot of handheld shots. I wasn't confined by the tripod. It was very freeing, and it was just really a lot of fun. And you just kind of walk up and down and you explore the beach and you see what you see and what are you inspired to capture. It's a lot of fun. I love doing photography like that. I really do.
I can tell.
Yeah.
But it becomes super important whether you're making money with it or not.
Right.
You know what I mean? The people who I know that's all, they have full-time careers in photography.
Yeah. Right.
They all speak of the same thing. It's the joy of being, whatever it is, even people who shoot, I shouldn't say shoot people, but they photograph people.
Yeah. Like portraits.
Industry.
Yeah.
But there's a joy to it because they're connecting with the people. You know what I mean? So that joy comes from a human interaction rather than interaction with a natural, a flower or a tree or a sun or light, So it's a similar experience. It's just a different connection. Yeah.
It's a different subject matter. Yep. But again, the connection is the important thing, right?
Yeah, exactly. And the play, when you're photographing people, they get very nervous and stiff, right? Unless they're models and trained, but that's another story. Just people, they normally have that, I don't want to be, photographed. But when you play with them, then
put them at ease.
And then you get real.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
So the art of play is very important.
Extremely.
And I use the word art because sometimes you have to. So it's such a shame that when we're little, we're naturally playful, right? Yeah. And then you grow up and you become, I'm an adult now and I'm not allowed to play anymore, which is hogwash, really.
Which is totally stupid because play is rooted in curiosity, right? Yes. It's rooted in curiosity and experimentation. And that's the beautiful thing about digital photography. It's like, okay, you don't have to spend all the money on the film or the plates or whatever. Like you can take 1,000 photos and you can delete them if they're not working, but you have so much, there's no reason not to play and experiment, especially with digital. There's no reason why you can't do that. And you might surprise yourself. It might break through something that you didn't realize before, or, it might flip a switch and you're like, hey, I need to do this more. This is really fun and compelling. And yeah.
And then your life is more enriched,
Exactly. Yeah. Because you're satisfying a curiosity and you're just allowing yourself to be curious and experiment and have fun. And again, it's about having fun.
Yeah.
Don't take it so seriously.
And then, and you've talked about this quite extensively, but you share it with others through your work through the hospitals and, give that art to people who can't get out, who can't play. So you kind of allow in your playful work, you're sharing that feeling with the others. And that makes it, It's so funny. So many of the questions that I have written down for you, we answer before we get there. It's making me laugh as I'm reading through this. It's like, what impact do you hope your photography has on others? Well, you've already said that like 7 times, but do you want to share with us again, like what you hope the impact you hope from your photography?
I mean, there's several things, right? For maybe a non-photographer audience, I would hope that it brings a little slice of the beauty of nature, beauty of biophilia and the natural world to that person. Again, it's about conveying, hope and healing and renewal. That's really, really important to me. And I think, nature plays such a big part of that. But I also think even if when you're sharing your work with other photographers, it kind of shows them maybe what's possible. I love looking at other photographers' work, and I am so blown away by so much of the talent that's out there. I mean, I look at some images, I'm like, wow, I would have probably walked right by that and not even stopped. And this person made such a compelling image of that subject. And that's so inspiring to me. I love being inspired by others. And I hope that in a small way, I can be a little bit inspiring to others too, and just kind of show them what's possible. It's okay to have your shadow slider to the right, and it's okay to have your black slider to the right too.
You can do whatever you want.
That's okay. That's okay to do.
I've been playing with something, and I really love what it does, but I take the clarity and is it texture?
Yeah.
Not clarity. What's the other one?
There's texture, there's clarity, and
the third one.
Here, let me see. I got my Lightroom up here. Let's see.
I usually leave clarity pretty much alone. Dehaze. Okay.
I love dehaze. I love to haze.
Yeah. I usually leave that one alone unless there's like a fog issue, right? I mean, sometimes I'll play with it depending on the image.
Add haze. I love adding haze to images.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah. It gives it a really nice kind of soft look, but it just naturally kind of desaturates color.
Yep.
I'm photographing with a Canon R5. I got the Canon lenses, you got those Canon colors and when I'm processing,
pull them back. Yeah.
I want to pull them back because sometimes you're like, oh, that's a little bit much. I love the colors, but sometimes having a super saturated colors or a certain profile of colors can be distracting to what you're trying to say, So I think it's sitting back and like looking and asking yourself, like, what do I want to communicate and how can I process this in a way to communicate what I'm trying to say? And sometimes color can be a distraction, unless it's a really key integral part of the story that you're trying to tell.
And it's okay to play with those sliders.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. It's non-destructive. There's no reason not to. You can make multiple virtual copies and have a ball. Have a ball. Yeah.
It's another area I tend and you probably can relate to this a little bit, but because I'm in front of a computer so much, I don't want to necessarily, I'd much rather be in the field you still, so when it's really hot outside, it's like, okay, now I want to be, I want to take time to edit my images.
Exactly.
I have some stuff from last year. I haven't even finished.
Yeah. I've had stuff for years that, hopefully someday I'll get around to editing.
It won't fall apart if I don't.
No, it won't. What I mean? It won't. Yeah. Nobody's going to know that you didn't share that. So
that's fun. Okay. Very cool. Well, let's wrap this episode up and we're going to come back again one more week and we're going to talk more about I call it a mindful heart and a mindful eye. And we're going to talk a little bit about what that is and how that gets impacted into your work. And then some advice for our audience. We'll go there next week. Okay. So great.
Yeah.
Thank you again.
All right. Thank you.
One more question before you go. How can people learn more about you and see your artwork?
Yeah. So you can find me on Instagram at optimal_focus is my handle. Also, my website is optimalfocusphotography.com. And so I am starting to get into, teaching, mentoring, workshops. I have a couple of women's retreats coming up. One is in Olympic this summer, and then I have one coming up in Joshua Tree next spring. And so those are on the events tab on my website. My website needs to be updated. So please, be
gracious.
Be gentle with me. Yes. Thank you. And then I wanted to do a little plug because there's a organization that just got started by some female photographers called Outdoor Photo Alliance. And they are doing an all women's conference coming up in February in Colorado. And so I will be speaking at that too. So yeah. And I believe it's outdoorphotoalliance.com. I told them I would give them a plug since this is like their inaugural thing, but it's really geared towards women, giving women kind of a safe space to learn about photography and be inspired. So I'm really happy to be part of that as well.
If you enjoyed this podcast, The Creative Warriors, the female heart and soul of photography, please like, subscribe, share, and comment. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep the conversation going. Stay curious and have a happy artistic journey. Thank you for listening to the Creative Warriors podcast, the female heart and soul of photography. See you next episode.